Hello everybody, I'm Carlos and I'm the animator at TheLittleLabs. And for this month Lunch and Learn, we will teach you a little behind the process of a studio run, the game we built completely in Rive. For this occasion, you will see the basics of Rive and the state machine, and you will learn how to create and animate a button and how a character can interact with it. So let's dive in.
So in this Launch and Learn, we will learn about how I did a small animation like a button, a functional button in Rive, like this one. And if we press a button, like how it will look the character, like how like a small jump. So first, I would like to do an introduction of Rive. We use Rive for interactive animations, and for this, I'll need to show you a little bit like how everything works. It's pretty similar to After Effects, if I can say it that way, but it has some logic behind and that we really need to be mindful of to make everything works. First, I will start with the main difference from Rive and After Effects. Uh, the first difference is that we have two modes, the design mode and the animate mode. This is really important because everything you do in the design will affect the animation, and it's really important to have that in mind. Uh, I would say that design is the base mode to do the animation. So everything you do in design will affect animation, but not otherwise. If we're here in design mode, here as you see on the top right, uh, and the in the left, it's all the elements like you would animate, you will design. Here we have two groups, the background, which is everything that we're not touching today, and the intro UI, which is the character and the button. For the wrapper, I have the design of the our character today, and I have separate a button. The button is separated with groups, as you can do in Illustrator, for example. Once we have everything together, we can jump into the anime mode, which is a little bit different from what we are used to. Uh, this is an example of what I've done before. A functional button and a jump. And everything here in this artboard is already done. But I walk you like how I got to this point. First, we need to explain the main and the heart of Rive, which is the state machine. The state machine is the hardest part of Rive. It's like a logic behind the animation that makes everything works. It's the most important part, and it's really sometimes tricky to understand. But once you get the basic steps, I would say that it's really enjoyable and pretty easy to understand. Uh, in the state machine, there's a small logic where an animation can play or stop between each other depending on certain conditions. And I will explain that in just a few moments. So let's get started. First, we will do animation button. The animation, like if you see here in this artboard, the button is not working. So I will walk you to how to do that. Uh, First, it's pretty important to understand that Drive works with timelines. Timelines are sort of like pre-comps in After Effects, but we call it here timelines. It's pretty much the same. And a timeline is different. You can have similar timelines, but with a small difference to make the animations happen. Uh, this is what we're gonna do this time. We're gonna do three different timelines. This one will be called idle, and I'm gonna drop it on inside of the folder of the button so we can keep everything in order. We're gonna start first with the first animation, which is not really an animation. Drive will handle the animation, the transition between the buttons, as you may see in a few seconds. First, let's start with the idle animation, which is pretty important to keep in mind beforehand. What are you supposed to do with this animation? In this example, we're just doing the button to have like in this state machine, I'm gonna show you. We have like a small hover, and once we click, the button is pressed, and we have like a small scale right there, and we're gonna try to replicate that. So first, we need an idle mode, which is like how the button is gonna look all the time if we're not pressing it, if we're not hovering. So we're gonna start with that. If you see here in the hierarchy, we can control our layers, and we have everything here set it up. So for the top, which is it is this box, like the top box, just this with the text. I can keyframe that. I will keyframe here in the right side, and we have a keyframe that says that every time I play this animation, the bot that this square is gonna be here. So I'm gonna do that with everything that I think it will move later. For example, the position of this, I will do the scaling of the overall button. So I'm gonna select the button, and I'm gonna keyframe the scale. Also, in the bottom of the button, we have a glow. We'll probably use that as well. So I'm gonna um, keyframe the opacity of that to 0% because right now in the idle mode, we don't need any glow at all. Uh, what else? I think that's good. I'm gonna also animate the path animation of the glow because probably when we're pressing the button, it's gonna shrink a little bit. So I'm gonna also animate that path animation. It is right now. Okay. So far, so good. We don't need any more keyframes. We for the bottom animation, we only need this kind of keyframes. But this was only the idle animation. So we need to do a press animation. So I'm gonna duplicate this and I'm gonna call it pressed. And this older timeline that we're using is gonna be the older animation that we need to do to make the transition between idle to pressed. So how that will look like? It will be probably the top will be a little bit down. The bottom probably will be a little bit more like smaller. I'm gonna put that to 90 X and Y. Sorry, X and Y here. I'm gonna go to the idle and to the jump. You already see the difference between how it's idle and how it's pressed. Also, I forgot to change the color of the idle of the button itself when it's idle and when it's pressed. Because if we take a look here on the exercise that is already done, when I pressed, we see that there's like a color change here. We need to keyframe that as well to let Rive know when it's idle, it's gonna be this gradient, and when it's pressed, it's gonna be a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go back to idle, and I'm gonna press uh, on top the rectangle that we're using for the top. I'm gonna keyframe that, and I'm gonna keyframe the gradient itself. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the pressed, and I'm gonna keyframe that as well, but I'm gonna change actually the gradient, and I can make it a little bit increased, like the gradient, move around the handles, and maybe do this a little bit darker in any way. I'm gonna make it a little bit like this. Yeah, let's leave it like that right now. Only needs to be a little bit darker. Okay. So you can already tell the difference. Okay. Uh, what else? We're missing the glow. When we're clicking the button, we should see a little glow. So I'm gonna animate. I'm gonna change that as well. So for the glow, I will remember that in idle we had 0%. I'm gonna do it 100% here in the press version. But you may see that there's like a small gap here. We need to change that as well because the button now is just a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna animate the path animation of the glow itself. So we just take this and make it here. maybe we could add a little bit more and add a keyframe on the glow itself, so it's less blurry and more blurry. I can do that. So we can click here where is all the color properties, and on the amount of blurriness, I'm gonna um, turn that up a little bit more. I'm gonna do it this way, so it's pretty noticeable. If you remember, I didn't do that in the idle animation. So if I don't do that, it will cause problems later on. So it's good to have in mind where are you gonna tweak later to make sure that you have all of these. So in the idle animation, I'm gonna put a keyframe on the glow and I'm gonna turn it down to 0, for example. Or yeah, 0. Nice. So far so good. We have two uh, time lapse, the idle and the pressed. And I think for now we can test that how that's looking. So we're gonna jump to the state machine to see that all how that works. Here in the state machine, we have the entry, which is like the starting point of the state machine, and it's like sort of like a map. You can start and you finish, and you can have a road in between, and an order to make your animation have some logic. Let's call it like that. So first, we will always have the idle because, of course, when you're not pressing or hovering, it's gonna be always idle. So if I press spacebar, nothing is happening right now. And if I add the pressed version, I can connect idle with pressed. And if I start the set machine, let's see what happens. It instantly goes. I'm just pressing a spacebar, and I'm not clicking anything, and it goes from it skips the idle and goes straight to press. Why? It's pretty simple. We need to add a condition on Rive to make this happen. This condition will make the idle animation to be always present until it says otherwise. So to do that, we see here there's like a little arrow that indicates that idle goes to pressed. So if I click here, there's a new screen coming up that we have never seen before. This is where we handle all the transition and how Rives handles the transition by himself, the speed, the ease, etc. And down here we see arrow to press and a little plus button. Here is to create a condition. It's really important to have this in mind, and I'll show you the different types of conditions we can have. For a button, because it's only a click, we only need one kind of um, condition, which is a trigger. That's when inputs come up, and in Rive, which are pretty useful for different kinds of animation and use of interactive UI. The inputs, there are three ways of doing inputs. It's the number, which is basically a number between 0 and 1000 or 100, and you can use whatever you like. The other way to use inputs is boolean, which is basically true or false. Pretty straightforward. And the other one is trigger, that is gonna be the one we're using today, which is pretty much when the trigger is fired, it's gonna activate or deactivate something. For buttons, this is the best way to go because it's pretty easy. You just click and it activates. So the input here we're gonna use is gonna be called jump. And let's back in the set machine where I told you about where we are in the condition. Now, if we add a condition and it says if jump is triggered, it's gonna activate pressed. So let's try that. I'm here clicking and nothing happens. Why? Because we're missing something that is really important to make this input work or this condition. There's no way for Rive to know that you're clicking unless something is listening or something is indicating that the trigger needs to be fired. That's when listeners come up. Uh, when you start the program, you will see it that this way. But if you click here, it's gonna come up. The listeners are the way to tell, are the bridge between the user and Rive to make something happen. So they do pretty much listen to what you need. So in this case, we need to indicate Rive that anytime I click here, that will indicate right that the jump input is gonna be trigger, and this way the animation will work. So I'm gonna add a listener. I have here listener one, and I'm gonna call this jump listener. Okay. We need to indicate this listener what it's gonna do. So for this, I'm gonna add a target, which is the way for us to know what it's listening to and the action that it will do if I click something. I'm gonna select the target. In this case, I'm gonna select button, which covers everything about this group. So it pretty much covers everything, like here and the bottom part, even the text. So the target will be the button, but can be anything, to be honest. It can be just for example, just it can be just the text if we indicate. And so if I click on the text, it will trigger. But if I click over here, it won't trigger. So in this case, because it's a button, I just need to do it on the whole button. So I'm gonna replace that again. The target will be the whole button. Okay. But we haven't indicated yet what it's gonna do. That's when this part comes up. If we click again on the plus button, we will indicate an input change, and it will indicate when the user is on top of the button, it's gonna fire the trigger jump. Something I missed before doing this action is that we can indicate what type of action we'll do depending of the behavior of the mouse. So in this case, we have a pretty different kind of behaviors, like a point enter, which is pretty much hover, pointer exit when the pointer actually exits the target, pointer down when you click, pointer up when you are holding and you uh, stop holding the click. For this option, we just need a pointer down, which is pretty much a click. So this means when the button element is clicked, it will fire a jump. That does pretty much the job. So let's try that. I'm gonna start the set machine, and if I click, it does the animation. So we do have like some transition right there. But what is looking like so choppy? That's because we haven't added any transition at all. That's when this panel that I told you before comes handy. Right now, we have the duration, which is from point A to point B. How long do you like to be from point A to point B? So this is milliseconds. So I would say 150 milliseconds. Let's try that out. I'm gonna click start the send machine, and we can see already a small transition right there. We can definitely play around to see what can be best. Let's make that faster, you know, or it can be way slower like this. But because it's a button, I would say between 100 and 150, it's okay. So we can still see the animation, you know. but make it pretty quick. Okay. So now we have a button, a functional button. But when I start the state machine and try this out, I press the button, but it sticks with jump. Sorry, with press the press mode. Why? That's because we haven't told the state machine that we want to reset the button back to the idle mode. So if we don't tell Rive that we want that to be reestablished, it's not gonna understand. So we need to go from pressed to idle. Now you see that we have two arrows here, the ones that goes from idle to press and press to idle. Here is the one that we already work on, and here is the one that is pretty much new. I'm gonna do an exercise to show you how that looks. I'm gonna start the set machine and I'm gonna click. I'm clicking, and the bottom seems pretty weird because there's no condition at all telling Rive that as soon as it's here, it can stop for a little bit before going back to idle. So we need to add that. Depending on the kind of project you're doing, it's sometimes best to add another condition to make this. But because we're doing just a simple button, we don't really need that. We only need a transition, like the way we added here. Or we can tell Rive uh, that we're doing another type of condition, which is exit time. Exit time pretty much does that if the animation it's a second long, how much percentage of that animation will play before coming back to the completing the transition. Let's call it like that. So for example, if I say exit time will be 100%, the press animation will uh, play completely, and only after it's done, it's gonna move back to the other to the next animation. In this case, it will go back to the idle. So let's do that. I just did exit time 100%, and let's try to see how it looks right now. It stays there for a little bit, and once the animation is completed, it goes back to the original pose. And we can play around with that. We can make it 100%. We can make it 30%. Let's see how that looks. Start the machine, and it's a little bit faster. This will depend on how long the animation it is, because the animation is just a second. Well, my timeline is just 1 second. Uh, we can change that. Like if I would like it to be hold for longer time, I can change this to 5 seconds, and then I will switch this back to 100. And if I play it, we're the Rive is pretty much waiting all that 5 seconds to finish before switching back. So it's a pretty useful tool that I use to make some transitions and to have like a buffer time before the next transition. I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna switch it back to 1%, 1 second, and I'll have it 30%. Okay, that's pretty good. But there's something else missing. We're missing the hover animation. So I'm gonna create that as well. In this case, I'm gonna duplicate the idle animation because it's closer um, to what I have, what it will look like. And I'm gonna duplicate that and call that hover. For the hover animation, we would like the animation to be a little bit uh, the button to be a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna change the scale to 110. I'll probably make the glow appear a little bit. I'm gonna change the opacity to 50, and also tweak the opacity. Sorry, the blurriness of this element. So I'm gonna turn it up to 20. And what about if we add a little bit more of color change here? So it indicates even more that we can click on this button. So for that, I'm gonna do rectangle, keyframe the color, and I'm gonna switch it to, let's say, a brighter color that we can really tell you that you can click on it. So we have three animations right now: idle, hover, and pressed. So the hover state is it's gonna be between the two other animations we have. So I'm gonna put it here. So I'll connect idle to hover, and I'll play the set machine. Right now, if I start the set machine, it's automatically going to hover because I don't have any condition here. So I need to set that up. So for this case, because we're doing a hover, that means if the pointer is on the button, it's gonna be displaying this animation, and when it's not doing that, we will really need to do another type of input. In this case, it will be a Boolean. Why? Because basically it's pretty much a true or false scenario. When the mouse is over the button, it's gonna be true, and what is not is gonna be false. So I'm gonna rename this as hover, and I am gonna add a new listener so Rive knows that we need that. I'm gonna create a new listener, and it already when I click here and I add here a listener, it already target the rectangle, but I don't really need that rectangle. I need the whole button. So I'm gonna select the target and click on the button group, and then I'm gonna make the listener do the action. So the input change will hover, set hover to true. So this means when the pointer enters to the button group, it will set the hover to true. Okay, let's see how that looks in the set machine. I'm gonna add the condition that I didn't before. So the condition between idle and hover would be hover, and then I'm gonna start the set machine. And if you see my mouse right now, it's on the button itself, and I'm gonna exit the screen, the button, but nothing is happening. That's because we haven't set the false state of this hover. So I need to do that. We don't really need a new input. We can stick with the hover we already have, but we do need a new listener. So I'm gonna rename here so we can have it in mind. Hover true, and I need another of these. So I'm gonna add a new listener which is called hover false. I'm gonna select the target to be the button, and I'm gonna indicate Rive that when the pointer exits the button group, it will do an input change, which would be hover turns to false. Okay, let's start the set machine and see how that looks. We're in. Oh, true. We haven't set the condition yet, so let's do that. Sorry. Um, I had it like this before, but we need to indicate right that when the set machine the hover input is false, we need to go from hover to false. So I'm gonna create the condition hover. If hover is false, it's gonna go from hover to idle. So let's do that. Right now I'm in the button, and if I exit the screen, it's gonna go back to idle. So in the mouse and it's hovering, and we have an animation right there. But we're missing a little transition right there, so we can add it. So I'll go back to the duration and add 100 milliseconds and back as well. So we have a smoother transition between idle and hover. I'm gonna start the same machine and we have it then. Nice. Then what happens if I click? It doesn't happen anything because I haven't connected hover with pressed. So I need to do that. And I just did that and I'm gonna show you again what happens if I start the same machine. It does this weird thing because I haven't set the condition yet that once it's hovered, I need to still click down to have the animation turn to hover to press, from hover to press. So I need to add this condition. I'm gonna add it. We already have it, which was the one before, jump. So if jump is fired, it's gonna change to pressed. And I'm gonna add a little bit of uh, duration here so it looks smoother. And let's see how that looks. It's hovering, it's not. If I click, we have animation right there. Bottom animation, which is definitely working the same. I think that's pretty great. I'm gonna switch this instead of 30 to 100 so we can really appreciate the difference. Idle, hover, pressed, it will be there until all the press animation is completed and it'll go back to idle. But because I am right now on top of the mouse is on top of the button, of course it will gonna trigger it's gonna display the hover animation. Great. This is how I would do a button in Drive. A pretty easy button. But what about doing the button that actually triggers the character to jump? Because right now I'm clicking jump and it doesn't make the character jump. So we need to set that up. For that, I will show you first how I work on the game with characters. There's two different ways to work in Rive with the characters. There's the easy way, which is pretty much animating the character with anchor points, the way you would do it in After Effects with nulls and position, rotation. And there's the other way, which is with an actual rig. The rigs in Drive is something I haven't touched yet, and that's because the kind of project we have so far. I think that we don't really need a rig for this type of character because it's real simple. You can get away with the animation with just moving around, scaling, rotation, position, etc. So, for example, here in the hierarchy, we have the character. And I divided this in a way that we have the head, we have the left arm, the right arm, and the body, and also the foot, right? For example, in the game we did, uh, I used this as a wrapper to make everything more easy for us to control. So in the head wrapper, like the character, we have a wrapper, we have a head, and in the head there's a bunch of heads. We have the head of the character 1, 2, 3 to 8. So this way, I just need to animate the head of one time, and the other one will follow. So instead of animating head 1, head 2, I just animate the layer called head, the group, and that will do the trick. So for this scenario, we only have one character, and I'll show you how that looks. For example, I already have the animation of the jump done, but I'll show you a little bit like how it's really animated on Rive because What we did before is just pretty much placing keyframes, but now it's more about actually doing an animation of more like we're used to After Effects. Before it was more like Rive handling the transitions between an animation to another, but here it's more like an actual animation. So I'm gonna show you that. I'm not gonna go through the whole process of the animation. It's pretty much similar uh, to the one we do in After Effects, but I'll show you just a little bit like how I do it. For example, the body, I can select the body wrap, which is the one I use. I'm gonna make this to have like a little anticipation. I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add a little rotation on the arms here and here, like this. And then a few keyframes more. I'm gonna move the whole character. I'm gonna add another keyframe here. And I'm gonna move the whole character up so we can see. So he's like jumping. I'll do like some head rotation here. I'm gonna add here. Oops, sorry. Head. Yep, like this. I'm gonna move the arms a little bit more. I'm gonna create some rotation here and here. Also, we need to do that for the uh, pen that he's using. So I'm gonna counter rotate that. Keep it this way. Uh, I'm gonna bring this back down. Now I'll do like a small step, a small setting, settle down. Yeah, gonna create here, base here, this back. Uh, Probably this doesn't look good. Let's try to see how it looks. I'm gonna ease a little bit the keyframes, especially the position. Let's see how that looks. Okay, and we have like a small animation right there. Of course, if we add even more detail to the animation, it will look way better. But for this example, we're just gonna stick with that. We can maybe have real quick here these and these, and we can definitely add secondary movements like the hat, the wizard hat. We can add that head, head one hat to the hat. We can add also a keyframe, like a secondary movement right there, and so on. It's it's a matter of adding small details to the whole animation to make it look like pretty cool. Yeah. Let's go to the next step. Well, right now here in this artboard that I did, we already have the animation of the jump. I'll show you. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I did this animation beforehand, where we see a nice animation of the character jumping, and we also have an idle animation. So how can we make everything work between the idle animation and the jump? So once I click on the jump button, it will trigger and make the character jump. That's when the state machines comes again after we have those two animations, the idle animation and the jump animation. I'll go back to the state machine, and here's the button already working like the way we did it before. But I need to add another tab to this, like more like another layer of a state machine, and we can do that by just clicking here. Here, we're working on the same state machine, so all the logic between all the tabs we're working here will still work, but with a different kind of depth. So here, for example, we have this tab is just for the button. But here in this layer 2 that I'm gonna rename to character, no, it's a different perspective of this test machine that will basically means that it will be connected between each other, so we can make everything jump. So we already have the button. It's matter of just adding the logic of the character jumping. So for this, what it will go first is the idle animation. I'm gonna connect entry to idle. And if I start the state machine here, it's just gonna play the idle animation. But we need the jump as well. So I'm gonna add the jump. And I'm gonna connect idle with jump. So if I start the state machine, it will go straight to the jump. Why? Because we don't have any condition here. And we need that condition to make Rive know that until we click on the button, it cannot jump. So I'm gonna add that condition. So I'm gonna create a condition and I will indicate if jump trigger is a fire, it's gonna make the character jump. The jump trigger is the one we already did, so it's not needed to add another one. So I'm gonna see how that looks. I'm gonna press, and we have a small animation right there. Uh, I'm clicking again, and it's not working. That's because we haven't set Rive that after the jump is done, we need to go back to idle. Otherwise, it's gonna just stick to the jump and stay there until like pretty much forever. Because we're using just one shot. This means that the animation just gonna play once, but there we can replace that. We can use one shot, loop, or ping pong. Let's see if I switch jump to loop. Let's see how that looks like. It's looping now, right? But we really need just one shot because what we really like to do is just going from idle to jump and back to idle. So I'm gonna go from jump to idle. I'm gonna select, and I'm not gonna add a condition of an input, but more like I'm gonna wait the whole animation to happen before going back to idle. So I'm gonna click on exit time, and I'm gonna put 100%. I can add a little bit of duration and transition to smooth things out a little bit more, so it can look way cleaner. So let's start the set machine and see how that works. Jump, the button is working, the hover, and, and now we click, and it's right there. We have a character reacting to a button. And as you may see, we have just one state machine, but we have two different levels of state machine. Here in the bottom, it's only working, it's only the logic for the button. And here in the other layer, it's the logic on the character reacting to the button. So I think that covers pretty much it. This is the way to do a small animation of a button and something reacting to a button, in this case, the character in Rive. And I hope I everything was clear, and I hope you like it. Thank you so much. That's a good question. I was there when I was starting Rive. I'm definitely not an expert, but it's really overwhelming to come from After Effects where you feel comfortable and you really know everything how everything works. But once you come here and you see a bunch of buttons, a bunch of state machine connections, it can be really overwhelming. But I would say that the animation part is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. There's a few things that are different from After Effects, but the animation part is pretty similar. So I would say that you don't need to be afraid of that. It's a different tool, so of course there's gonna be different things. But the animation part is so easy. There's some complications and some shortcuts that we do have in After Effects that you cannot have here, because of course, like the optimization and everything. At the beginning, it could be tricky, but you can really catch on what you can do and what you cannot, and be patient. It's be patient with animations because animation in After Effects, the same animation could be 10 minutes in After Effects, but here it could be 30 minutes. It's just be patient with the software because it really pays off when you are able to do this that we cannot in After Effects. But yeah, once you learn the those small tricks, like the path animation, which is a little bit difficult compared to After Effects, once you get that, it will be so much easier, and it's pretty much like animating After Effects. On the other part, with the state machine, I will tell you that it's I get the the idea, and I get the problem that it's a little bit tricky to understand at the beginning. I was so afraid to learn this, but somehow I was afraid of this logic because I don't know. I was thinking about this like in a developer mind, which I don't have, and I was so afraid to it. But it's not really that difficult once you understand the basic of it, which it could be, like just doing the button. Like a few months ago, I just only know how to do a button, and somehow that really switched your mind and the logic behind it that will can make you uh, really work on something else and something way more complex. Knowing just the fundamentals of the state machine can be really powerful and can get you like really real far away. Like I only knew how to do buttons, and somehow we end up with a whole game with a interface and a colliders and everything. So it's it's really cool to have the chance to do this. I'm just an animator, and I didn't know any coding before, but now I can do sort of coding with this, which is pretty cool. So I would say I will encourage any animator to learn Rive, and it's really cool to see your animations come to life, literally to life with interactive, not just movement.